Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're really grateful for all of you being here. I wish we could all see each other. I always kind of say that, but this is the best we can do with the times. So, welcome to our Arthur C. Rotenberg Suicide and Depression Studies Program public speaker series on suicide research and community practice. I'm Sakina Rizvi. I am the chair of the program here at the University of Toronto and St. Michael's Hospital. And again, for some of you who are joining us for the first time, our goal here is really to try to share knowledge. There's so much that's going on in the world in the area of people supporting people with suicide risk, doing research, and it's really inspiring and impressive. And so we really want to bring that information to all of you. So, if there's things you want to know more about, please let us know. Our speaker series for this year is pretty much set, but for next season and the next academic year, starting September, we've got a bit of an open book. So let us know, and we'll try to find speakers to focus on the things that you're interested in. We are going to be here monthly until June on Mondays from 12 to 1. You can sign up for updates on who's coming next in the link in the chat. And also at the end of Tracey's talk, if you could also use the QA at the bottom, I'll be monitoring that for questions as well. I always like to be mindful of having conversations with emotional safety. And so while these talks really are to inspire and to bring hope. It is a difficult topic, so please be mindful of that. If there's anything that comes up for you that you're like, "Ooh, like I'm feeling a little bit upset or feeling triggered by something," like please take time for yourself. Do whatever you need to do. Get a nice tea. If you've got stuffies like Tracey has behind her, you can go grab one and squish them. But these sessions are recorded, so you're not going to miss out on anything, and those will be posted. And so just make sure to be mindful of whatever it is that you might need. So. I am so pleased that Tracey Whiteye is here to joining us today. She is a holistic Indigenous practitioner, educator, wisdom seeker, advocate, and helper with over 24 years of collective experience. She works to uplift traditional cultural teachings and ceremonies and uses decolonizing Indigenous practices to support the resurgence of Indigenous ways of seeing, feeling, knowing, and being. Tracey's also the very proud mother of two sons and grandmother to five grandchildren, which is amazing. Her approach is rooted in ancestral wisdom, emphasizing intergenerational knowledge, storytelling, personal experiences, and land based education. She's going to talk to us today about Indigenous perspectives on the interconnectedness of youth mental health and suicide. So, welcome, Tracey. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Miigwech. So yes, Bonjour, Wabusk is going to Kahetapit, Nishnakaz Makodo Dam, Dunjaba, Lenape Nation, Lenny Lenape, Anishinaabe, Clay and Dow. And what I said is my spirit name, which means translates to white bear, polar bear woman who's looking ahead in the extension of that name, looking ahead from the waters. And currently, because of I'm still decolonizing, I'm still interconnecting in that connection of who I am to the land, the water, the air, and that beautiful, amazing fire that carries within my heart and all of my being. Um, I got my name translated into my original language, the Lenape language. So I've been practicing and working on that, but I'm not yet have that, so I'm just going to introduce it in the language that was given to me, which is Plains Cree. So my Dodam on Bear Clan. I guess I can move along with these slides. Okay, hopefully, here we go. Um, so I wanted to open up with a prayer, just because it's just so important that. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth. Don't mind me. Here it is. I think we got it. Um, that's okay. That's okay. Let's go back and I will go to this. Everybody, I'm not tech savvy, but we're going to do the best that we can here. And let's see here. I'm not sure why that's not going in. Hold on. let's go back. Pardon me. Anyways, I'm originally from can everybody see it now? Perfect. So I was going to do the opening prayer. I had a recording heard from a language holder that has passed on, Karen. But I came across one of the prayers that was in the Lenape language, and I thought I would open up this session. But I'm going to open up by first of all by first to say Chimigwech to our Nokomis. Chimigwech Mishomis, Chimigwech Minobawadzawin, Chimagwech Pijama and for all that there is, and that I ask that my ancestors, my grandmas, they come together here, and as I the sacred bundle that I always have here beside me. I have some smudge burning. I got some water, got fire, got some berries here. That's what carries me into these presentations. That's part of what carries me into helping and in this good life. Okay, so let's see here what happened here. Here we go again. Pardon me. Let's go here again. And let's see if this can work again. Um, I don't know. Hold on, guys. This is something that, there we go. All right. 2 minutes. And we got this. I love it. Okay. I hope everybody can see this. I don't have a thumbs up or.
Yeah, we can see it.
We're good. We
Okay,
can see it. Yeah.
thank you, thank you. I'm just moving the bars around. So introduce myself. I'm from the I'm a Lenape, Anishinaabe. I'm where my father, who's Turtle Clan, the Lenaapeewii Lahkeewiit First Nations, known as Delaware Nation of the Thames, Moraviantown, near the Thames River, Chatham, Kent, Ontario. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge my 25 years of sobriety, which I refer as living that Minobawadzawin, that life, that good life that Creator intended me for. I am Anishinaabe Kwe, a Squabish Kwe, which is a woman helper for Creator. A little bit about myself instead of making a whole bunch of paragraphs. I thought I'd use visuals. So just to acknowledge an introduction and some of my season work. Here is the Cedar Lodge. I worked at Kikaiwanakin Southwest Regional Healing Lodge for about, oh my goodness, I think about 15 years. And that's including coming in. I did a 3-week program in 2001. I did a 2-week program 2002, and I did a 1-week program in 2004. And so when I was done my what is it called, Native community worker, what was mental health and addictions, I was able to get a job there. And after that, I worked there for like 14, 15 afterwards. So a lot of my season experience was working with knowledge keepers, medicine keepers, and helpers that carried that ancestral knowledge. So I got to learn hands on. For me, that's my education experience. That's where, they talk in Western, your BSW, MSW, and PhD. I gained a lot of that from a lot of amazing, strong knowledge keepers working there. I worked for Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centers, mental health and addictions, and what do you call it? I worked in alcohol and addictions at a friendship center in London, mental health and addictions in Windsor. I even had an opportunity to be on a research team through the Ontario Federation, and it was amazing. exploring what kind of programs and what kind of land base we can do working with the youth, youth violence, um, working with violence against women, children, men, and boys. Was really interesting. I really enjoyed doing that. The opportunity I got to part of I got my master's of social work through the Wilfrid Laurier Indigenous Fields of Study. I got to do my placement with the City of London with my bachelor through FNTI. I got to do my placement there, my student placement, as well as my master's. Um, what else? A little bit about myself today. I work at through St. Joseph's Healthcare London, Biggie G-SCON, Pathways to Mental Wellness. Also, I go in as a knowledge keeper through St. Thomas Forensic Southwest hospital there. That's all under the umbrella of St. Joseph's, but also at London Health Science at Indigenous Healing Spaces. I go in as well and as a knowledge keeper, cultural advisor, working with relatives, working with individuals, families, and communities, but also I'm part of a group of knowledge keepers that were able to different segments of part of the hospital. We get to do training and teachings with the staff. Also through London Health Science, I work on the psychiatrical mental health program ward, and I really love my life today. I can hear somebody speaker in the background, but that's okay. Other things, I did work. I'm seasoned. I worked in correctional service, Maplehurst, Brantford Jail, and a lot of seasoned experience that brought me to where I'm able to share some of the knowledge I've learned, shared knowledge with you today. Today, I have a holistic practice in the Delaware Nation called Squirrel's Nest, registered, and yeah, it's pretty exciting. Some of my other introductions I want to share with you is who I am is part of the waters I come from. Niwa Shingdaming is my mom, my grandma, and my great grandma and my great great grandma. That's all part of who I am is that Dotem, that bear clan. They're part of me. They're part of what carries me and helps me and guides me and supports me. Who I am, there's this girl in the corner here. When you're looking at the screen, it's in the right-hand corner. She's also part of that carries me and the work that I do and part of that inner child, that inner child, and to be able to comfort her, take care of her, and love her, and hold her within my heart in all that I do. And speaking of inner child, this is my granddaughter. I have all boys. I had two sons, and I have five grandchildren, four grandsons, and this is my granddaughter. And so that's part of who I am. And here is a picture of some of amazing women that I went to school with, through the Masters of Wilfrid Laurier. So I do hold a Master's of Social Work. I am a registered social worker. And, you know, I want to, and this is my little circle, you know, these beautiful, amazing, I'm getting emotional, but that's okay. Um, you come to a place in your life and you don't, your circle doesn't have to be huge and big and enormous. You come to a place in your life in my grandma's age where um you meet your like-minded, like-hearted, you know heart sisters, where you're able to be yourself, and you'll be able to sound off each other, learn from each other. And so yeah, I want to, this is part of who I am, in our healing journey that we've done for over 20 years, and so I want to acknowledge them. And also, here's a picture in the corner here. And, we're talking about the youth and, mental health and youth suicide and so forth. These two, I got to go on a trap line and do some work on the land-based, and I learned so much, from the Nishiyu community and their teachings, and who I am as part of these ceremonies of life. I remember this grandpa said, life is a ceremony, ceremonies about life. So that's a little bit about me in my introductions. And I guess, when you go to the meetings and the rooms, they how I qualify. Um, what supports me in that foundation as I in this presentation today is, I got some berries, I got some water, I got the fire, the air that we breathe, and all the elements that connect, that carry me through this presentation today. Hold on. Be mindful. I'm trying to move this bar here. Okay. Learning outcomes. We only have 45 minutes, so I got a half an hour. I'm going to try to touch all the bases the best I know how. I'm not an expert, but I can share some of the knowledge and wisdom that I've learned. I can only share what I lived through. I can only share what I experienced as a helper, through ceremony, through the work that I've done in the past over 20 years. So today we're going to look at examining the factors contributing to the high rates of suicide amongst Indigenous youth and associated challenges. We're going to explore Indigenous perspective on understanding youth mental health, youth suicide, also including we're going to look at identifying some key factors, gaps in health outcome. And also, we're going to explore and look at the significance of promoting community-driven initiatives to support youth and foster healthy communities. The framework and how I'm presenting today is through the Holistic Human Developmental Model. I want to acknowledge Dr. Bob Anton Ba. Like I said, I can only share what I experienced. I can only give to what I went through. And this framework is what we went through. It was first introduced to me back in 2001 at the Southwest Regional Healing Lodge, Kikaiwanakin. And so I will take you today in the next half hour, visioning in the Eastern doorway, the spirit awareness. Also, we'll explore in the Southern doorway, struggles, ways of relating, emotion. And then we're going to walk through the Southern doorway, ways of knowing, building, rebuilding, and that represents mind. And then we'll end with into the Northern direction, talking about preservation, maintenance, body, ways of doing. Protocols, values, and principles. Protocols, values, and principles today is the 7 sacred teachings. The turtle that represents truth, humility, that Maingan, the wolf, Magase, love, and then we have the Makwa, Mach, bravery, the buffalo, respect, and Bigfoot, Sabe, honesty, and collectively, here in this beautiful sacred space, we'll look through and experience some wisdom and knowledge. All right, first doorway, awareness, Eastern doorway, spiritual ways of seeing, visioning. So, I'm just trying to move this. There we go. Perfect. So types of mental illness within youth, depression and anxiety. Indigenous youth have elevated rates of mood and anxiety disorders, suicide and suicidal behaviors, and what we're going to explore and talk about today. I guess before we continue, just some trigger warnings, that may come to, I hope reach out to your support system, Also, if you need to, there's the crisis helpline or any of those things that maybe if there's some, I just trigger warnings. It's just I want to put out there. Substance use disorder, there are also prevalent mental health concerns among Indigenous youth. And then ADHD, higher rates of ADHD diagnosed have been observed in First Nations children. Um, Maybe a little dry, but we need a little bit more update. I know they're working on that. We're in 2026, but these are some of the Statistics Canada studies. Indigenous people make up 4.9% of the population in Canada, over 1.6 million, Statistics Canada 2018. Suicide and self-inflicted injuries are the leading causes of death for First Nations youth and adults up to 44 years of age. For First Nations, the suicide rate is 3 times the national average. For Métis, the suicide rate is twice the million average, and for Inuit, the suicide rate is 9 times the national rate. Indigenous people have nearly 4 times the risk of experiencing severe trauma than the non-Indigenous population. The suicide rate is 5 to 6 times higher for First Nations youth than non-Aboriginal youth, and 11 times higher for Inuit youth than the Canadian national average. Nationally, the suicide rate amongst First Nations boys were 4 times higher than amongst non-Indigenous boys. It was 10 times higher amongst First Nations boys living on reserve. 20%, 25% of the accidental deaths recorded for Indigenous youth are unreported suicide. Suicide is the leading cause of death for youth in Canada. For Indigenous communities, high rates of suicide are linked to a variety of factors, including consequences of colonialism, discrimination, community disruption, and the loss of culture and language. Suicide is one of the darkest and saddest crises facing Indigenous peoples around the world today. Okay, so we're going to go into the southern doorway, struggles, ways of feeling emotional. So we're going to take a look at some of the struggles. So, risk factors and root causes. What are they? Policies and ongoing residential school systems. Policies such as the residential school system, the removal of Indigenous children during the 60s scoop, and ongoing child welfare practices has a significantly impact relationships and contributing to the erosion of families and community ties. So, we have the residential school boarding system. We have the 60s scoop. We have foster care. And we also have, we're right now in the millennial scoop. Facts, true, reality. These actions have resulted in complex and tragic outcomes which continue to affect many Indigenous youth today. Consequences include elevated rates of serious physical health issues, mental health challenges, cognitive impairment, suicide, instances of physical and sexual abuse, substance misuse, interpersonal violence, family disintegration, and involvement in the criminal justice system, both as victims, survivors, and accused convicted individuals. The root cause of youth mental health and suicide in Canada is as follows: the displacement of Indigenous youth from their traditional land bases, severance of their cultural connection to the land and traditional lifeways has occurred, This displacement and severance has resulted in social, cultural, spiritual, emotional, and psychological and physical disruptions. These disruptions cause significant impacts on social health and wellness facets. The impacts are related to cultural losses, feelings of alienation, and identity disruptions. Okay, understanding how colonial trauma impacts children and youth. The contributing factors to youth suicide: colonization, historical trauma, loss of language and culture, disconnection from the land, spiritual, emotional, and mental disconnectedness, racism and discrimination, substance misuse, and complex layered traumas. Okay, colonialism, what is that? Here are some profound factors that continue to have negative impacts on lives of many Indigenous youth today: cultural alienation, territorial dispossession, intergenerational trauma, systemic discrimination, and social economic marginalization. Okay, cultural alienation, what is that? It's a pattern related to the formation of defense mechanism that may lead to withdrawing and isolating ourselves from other Indigenous individuals. This pattern can develop from childhood experiences. It can result in significant levels of fear, mistrust, especially if we have experienced deep, deep emotional pain within our own communities. As a result, we may sometimes feel a sense of shame about ourselves and other Indigenous individuals. This isolation can become so intense that we may perceive non-Indigenous individuals as offering a greater sense of safety and trust. So here is a group of young women and grandmas and aunties that got together and bringing traditional knowledge to the land, sitting around the sacred fire, understanding their roles and responsibilities. You know, these two girls here, they're just started their berry fast, you know, and all of us got together to share. You know, we created space together, sacred space to share, so that we can break some of these patterns. Territory dispossession. The displacement of Indigenous people from their ancestral lands have resulted in relocation to reserves. This process has been a fundamental strategy employed by settler population to establish political and economic dominance over Indigenous communities. I have a picture group of these beautiful, amazing relatives, nephews. You know, some of them have never been in Indigenous community reservations or settlements. That's the other thing, is housing securities, where we got to take them onto a trap line out in the bush to work on their healing, to work on their interconnection to the land, to the water, their interconnection to understanding that sacred fire, understanding, you know, that breath of life that was gifted to them. Territorial dispossession, also the constraints imposed by the reduction of mobility due to the contraction of Indigenous homelands. The cultural experience of Indigenous youth and children have been shaped by the restricted environment of the reservation system. You know, even though experiencing territorial dispossession, this program that we ran out in James Bay area on the trap line was like, it was so amazing. I loved it. it was just, we talk about filling the gaps with some of the things that are missing, you know, and this was a program that we put together, and knowledge keepers, helpers, and we worked with the Friendship Center up there too. And it was just amazing how we got to bring them out of their element into the natural laws and to be able to sit in ceremony, to gain a greater understanding of what that circle of life truly means. As a result, cultural lifestyles have become limited and practices have been influenced by various religious and governmental authorities, including Indian agents, missionaries, and bureaucrats who exert control over their lives. Still happening today. People say, genocide is history. I beg to differ. So, yeah, we talked about the foster care system, the 60s scoop, and I went, oh my God, I forgot all about this, where you had to get a piece of paper to go to leave your reserve. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Anyways, consequently, there are still individuals who have never left the reserve and still adhere strongly to the dominance, cultural beliefs, often rejecting aspects of their traditional ways. Truly known, truly so. But I wish I had more time. I wish I had you all day because I'd love to. This presentation is like through storytelling. Eh? We're in our storytelling time. And anyways, I can remember going into a place up in Quebec. I traveled with this knowledge keeper, and we got told to leave because we were bringing cultural practices, and that was totally against chief and council, you know, and that was totally against their laws and law, and so because we brought that in, they had a sweat lodge. They tore their sweat lodge down. They told us to leave, that we're never to come back, and we are not allowed to bring any of those things into a community like this. But anyways, long story short, that was back in 2005. It's 2026, but I believe back, oh my goodness, there's a trap lines out there. We do programs out there. There's a thirst dance. They have sweat lodges out there. So having that hope and continuing to do, I say we do our own healing work and working on our stuff collectively, interconnectively, there is always change. Okay, systemic discrimination, inequities in school disciplines. Minority students are statistically more likely to face suspension, expulsion compared to their white peers. So environmental inequities and racism. Socioeconomic marginalization, some of the examples: poverty, low income, unemployment, underemployment, education attainment, housing issues, health disparities, and overrepresentation in criminal justice. So the history, this toolbar, the history of the colonization and persistence discrimination has resulted in vulnerabilities and disadvantages that disproportion, oh, I can't say that word right now, affect Indigenous populations, contributing to elevating rates of engagement with the criminal justice system. Okay, let's move this back up here again. There we go. All right. Overrepresentation, socioeconomic factors, face like systemic inequalities we talked about, higher rates of poverty, employment, lower education, youth incarceration. Indigenous people face higher rates in the Canadian criminal justice system, with higher percentage of young offenders being charged again within the 2 years being released. Custody admission, gender disparities. Here are some of the graphs. Youth addiction, substance misuse. The rates are higher, Indigenous compared to non-Indigenous. Intergenerational trauma is intergenerational communities refer to the passing down psychological and emotional impacts stemming from historical trauma, such as forced relocation, cultural disruption from one generation to the next. Colonialism not only causes trauma amongst Indigenous youth, but also impacts their methods of coping and healing. This has contributed to the ongoing presence of intergenerational trauma, which continues to affect all Indigenous communities today. So building, rebuilding, we're ways of knowing, Western Doorway. So some of the things that moving forward that, I'm going to share with you is part of the building, rebuilding in, Indigenous youth, mental health and suicide is one of the key things that what I've learned is those spiritual needs, belief systems, but that spiritual need to be seen, to be heard, to know that we're accepted and believed, that spiritual need, that sense of belonging, to know that others have faith and trust in us, that spiritual need to know our place and purpose in this world, to feel secure, safe, and at peace with oneself, to know that our existence is beneficial to the important people in our life, to love and to be loved. Another part of that is important in working with our youth is we have what we call the 7 stages of life. And each one of these life, the good life, the fast life, the wandering life, the truth stage, the planning and planting, the doing stage, the elder stage, each one of these are so, so important. So when we talk about our, um, our cultural identity, our name, our clan, and our nation, this right here, the good life, those spiritual needs have already been woven within the child, within the parents. The family support was there. The mothers, the fathers were supported by their mothers, their fathers, and the child became strong. And by that time, they are out to get interconnected or reconnected with the land. The child goes out for their first fast. Okay, the significance of promoting community-driven initiatives to support youth and foster health communities for their development. What does community mean from an Indigenous ways of knowing? Community represents a complex network of interrelationships. Individuals are connected not only through kinship, but also through a significant relationship with the land, water, air, animal, plants, and all living beings, including the seen and unseen. These elements promote well-being of the entire community. The concept of community means the principles of collective responsibility, shared knowledge, and the vital role of ceremony and tradition. In essence, community extends beyond just being a group of individuals. It reflects a dynamic ecosystem where each person contributes to maintaining harmony and balance. What does community-driven approach mean? From an Indigenous ways of knowing, this approach means community has control over decision-making, problem-solving, involves collaboration with communities. They are the drivers. They're our drivers. Indigenous knowledge originates from all relationships and manifests through voices and actions of people. It generated with people coming together and arise from past, present, and future simultaneously. Indigenous knowledge is embodied in words, stories, movement, dance, feelings, concepts, and ideas. Using this approach, we work to create safe spaces, safe, sacred spaces. Individuals are connected not only through kinship, I wrote that about it already, and living, seen, and unseen, Okay, I think we doubled our PowerPoint. What time do we have? There's we have a video here, but our time is getting close. But if you get an opportunity, let's just go into it just for a second before we close. Let's see here. Here we go. Shared sound. Okay, I just this bar here is in the way. Okay. It's not gonna do this. Hold on a second. Stop sharing. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, here we go. All right. And okay. Give me 2 seconds. I was gonna put in
fly-in access to go looking at $2,000, but because of the isolation there's a heaviness that you cannot explain until you're in that community, and that's something that I had to learn. So when I entered into one community in the north, I sat next to a 9-year-old girl, and we asked them, what do you look forward to in your next year of life, and what do you hope for? And so all the other kids in the room were writing down their things, but her, I noticed she was writing suicide, death, and she's writing darkness and black. A lot of this current suicide crisis, it has been linked to a lot of the intergenerational trauma, but the biggest conversation we had with the province of Ontario, with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, is that we wanted them to change their narrative from suicide prevention to life promotion strategies instead, so that we're changing that narrative. And that was something actually that they did adopt within their new strategy. We need to be talking about life and the beautifulness of life, and that's where life promotion comes in. The 4 pillars that we saw when it came to talk about mental health, when it came to talk about spiritual health, these 4 pillars connected everything and connected everybody. What we identified in our toolkit was connection to self.
Okay, perfect. Do we stop sharing? Give me 2 seconds. All right. Can you see my screen?
Not
Can't see
quite yet.
Tracey.
No? Okay. Okay, let's go back in. No problem. Sorry, everybody. Go. Let's see what's happening.
While Tracey just pulls that up, just want to issue a quick reminder to people too, if you have any questions, to pop them in the Q&A function at the bottom, and Sakina will help facilitate a Q&A session at the end. And yeah, we can see that now.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to put it in full slide. Okay. So that video was put together by youth. That was brought together by a community of youth from different nations. And they're the ones that talked about suicide prevention should be changed to life promotion strategy. And so we'll talk a little bit more in a second here. Preservation maintenance in the Northern Doorway, ways of doing. So some of the things of, holistic wellness. Physical wellness is achieved through Indigenous ways of being, living a life with wholeness. And then spiritual wellness is the presence of Indigenous value, identity, belief, and the result of hope. Emotional wellness is achieved through relationship, a connection to family, community, and having an attitude towards living their result, which is belonging. It should be noted that family is inclusive of extended family, culture-defined relationship, but also family can be our clan family, significantly meaning also the land and beings of creation. Mental wellness is achieved through rational intuitive thought, and these two aspects of thought are woven together to create the understanding of the outcome which is meaningful and about life. Holistic wellness is connected to our creation stories. It's remained a reminder of the people through certain ceremony songs, ceremony activities. The story is deeply rooted in the spiritual psyche of that hungry, hungry person, the gifts to sustenance, the three sisters, the strawberry, the tobacco of all form, the ceremony cycle practiced today in the seasonal calendar. And the four pillars that they were talking about is connection to land, connecting to self, culture and language, community and spirituality. All these pictures I'm utilizing are all from the different programs that I've done and developed and worked with. And these guys, I could have a whole hour just talking about how they connected to the land, connected to self, culture and language, community and spirituality. I'm so proud of them. I mean, we have some women getting ready, preparing that sweat lodge, that lodge. Strength-based approach. Strength-based approach rather than focusing on individuals, which is rather than focusing on individual weaknesses, Indigenous people look at strength, resilience, and cultural assets to guide them. This holistic developmental model, I can spend a whole session and walking you through how this holistic developmental model can help with life promotion. Yeah, they talked about the toolkit. This was amazing. This was through Thunderbird Partnership School Mental Health of Ontario. Awesome, awesome. If you get a chance to take a look at it, it's just amazing. Holistic wellness, narrative. These experiences and narratives expressed by young people we work with reveal deep connection for nature. The youth are our future. Their voices matter. They matter. Through songs, language, and ceremony, the bond between human and earth is not only sacred, but essential for our very existence. It is a reminder that we, as a collective, intercollective, must learn from unwavering devotion and relentless passion to find our own interconnection, our own response.
Well, where we're really trying to highlight, even through this speaker series, that there's different ways of being that lead to healing, and there's so much that we can learn from each other. So thank you so much. And there's a lot of questions. I feel like there's a word that running through and as you were
So
what yeah,
what
please go ahead.
happens when we get torn from that is, well, um, that consists of belief systems, patterns, that consist of um, identity is going back home. I mean,
Mm.
how do I explain it better than through my own life, through my own walk of life? Is I needed to go back to my homelands. That's why I get emotional when I speak about my mom, my grandma, my great grandma. You know, I'm a daughter of a residential school survivor. I'm a day school survivor. Identity was ripped away from me. But even though those suicides, attempted suicides, my drug and substance misuse. I've been in recovery for over 25 years.
Mm.
And so that cultural identity is going back to those grandmas and grandpas, going back to that ceremony of life, going back and what is your creation story.
Mm.
First thing I was taught: name, clan, nation, and language. That's why when I located myself, Mojo, my spirit name is Wabusk Kahetapit, Makodo Dam, Lenaapeewii Nation, and I did it all in their language. That was gifted to me. I did, so that's part of identity and who I am. And each day I look in the mirror, I see the person that who I am and not my story anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I think that there's questions I think around that for um one question is how can we integrate this holistic approach into mainstream schools with First Nation students, especially those with disabilities, absenteeism, and that no longer live on their reserve.
Well, I'm doing it now. and and it's different in different areas. So just a quick example: when and within my family, my youngest son, was the system was he wasn't failing, but this is not a sense of blame either. The system was failing him. So there was no more knowledge and education that need to be brought forth. Even though he did a presentation on residential schools. But anyways, what I ended up doing, I had to remove him from the education system. And they call this alternative secondary education. If it wasn't for Nammern Friendship Center, Wingosh, where I got to bring him into a different learning method. We all don't learn the same. You can't put us in a box. We all, his learning method was different. And he so how he learned history was he got to learn about his identity and history of who he was as that Lenape and
Mm,
Anishinaabe. How he learned science and biology is he got to do land-based programs, learned about
mm,
the medicine, learned, all of those subjects at Western he got a credit for. And so I'll tell you something, he was going to be behind 2 years. Within that year, he caught up and he graduated and he got his graduation and he even got to do a SWAC program, which is Indigenous student within a college program. So prepared him. Where he is today, you know what? 3 years, 4 years clean and sober. He's a social worker, and
wow.
he works with Indigenous youth that are aging out of the system. He works with
Mhm,
Indigenous youth that are struggling with mental health, um, and homeless, houselessness, addiction, and stuff like that. So,
right.
yeah, that's how we can do it. Allowing those Indigenous youth to have a voice, all youth
Yeah.
collectively, no
Mhm.
more silos, red, yellow, black, and white. How can we work together? We're all here to take care of the land and water together. How can we do this collectively?
Yeah. And I think also for people who are non-Indigenous, there are some questions here around how how you think that they can incorporate Indigenous practice into their practice, um, in working with their clients, and what you might suggest, maybe even for more learning, maybe more
Go
for
go to your
yeah.
nearby friendship center. I'll just use London as an example, is they have friendship centers, they have SOHAC, Southern Ontario Health Access Center, they have Antilosa, all of the, go to your nearby Indigenous community. They have very amazing helpers that
Mm,
too walk the same way I do. We walk side by side, working on our healing. And if you want to bring them into your programs to share, to help you, to guide you, and how we can work together side by side.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's also some questions. So I know you were talking a lot about community, and what was so beautiful is that I think it's from the Indigenous lens, it's such a much broader perspective of community around, like it's not just the people around you, it's the land, it's the water, it's everything is in community. And there's some questions about if you could hear a little bit more about the community approach piece in life promotion.
Okay, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So I was hired as a like I do research work, or how Kathy Absalon had taught me wisdom seeking, knowledge seeking. And so when I did a project with the City of London, it was so amazing. I worked with the residential school survivors. What we did is how we did those data collecting
Mhm.
is we did circles.
Mm.
We did full moon ceremonies, water ceremonies. We connected with all of the elements. We connected with community. We connected with our relations. And so then when we were talking and sharing, I was still collecting the data, what they needed, but we did it from an Indigenous ways of knowing. Okay?
Mm. Yeah. Wow. So that community approach kind of served, it has multi purposes. There's one you're able to get information, but also it has the healing within it as well.
Oh my God. And when we did, we had our board, our committee, we had the London Arts Committee, we had the City of London, and then we had the writers, and I had a student that was with me too. She was doing her SSW practicum and she got to sit with me. Anyways, we're sitting with them and they go, okay, what are we going to do next? What do we do in this research? And I'm sitting in this board meeting and something lifted me up. There's a scene unseen and says, all of a sudden it came out of my mouth, I'm going to take you to my board meeting. I took him in a sweat lodge.
Wow.
We
Awesome.
went into a sweat. I said, this is how
Yeah.
we come to our decisions. So I got a
Mhm.
bunch of helpers, Indigenous helpers, and we got it together and they came in and they got to experience this is how we come to our decisions. These are
Mm.
one of the many ways. And I mean, there were supervisors, EDs, and we had one of the counselors from the city of London. It was awesome.
Can I come? I come too. That sounds amazing. Yeah. I think that what you're saying also speaks to one of the other questions around healing from intergenerational trauma and path towards that. So, what I'm gathering is that the ways of being and being in community as well is the path towards that. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to like what your perspectives are on
Repeat the
pathways to
question
healing.
again. I shouldn't
It
be
was
looking
about the
at the
question was
chat.
around like speaking more on healing from intergenerational trauma and like the pathways to that.
Oh my goodness, circle of life. When we go back to that circle of life, it's ongoing, everlasting. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
I've been on my healing journey for 25 years. For me, a red flag when somebody tells me they're fully healed, it's like, okay, I wish you well. But healing is ongoing, it's a journey. So when we go into that, I gave you an example when in that framework. I took you through the circle of life through that holistic human developmental model. I took you to the eastern doorway, the southern, the west, and the north. So each of us together in that circle of life, there's nobody higher than, less than, above and beyond. There's that equality and diversity. And so even when we do that kind of research work or we come together to develop programs, it's in the circle. There's that equality and diversity. And so
Mm.
when we talk about intergenerational trauma, we also have to be, in that process. I believe we're all impacted by intergenerational drama in some form or another.
Mm. Wow.
All of us.
Yeah.
But we can do this together. We can heal together. We can sit and have those safe places to do this together, to learn together. And I honestly believe we need to hear the voices of the youth. And it's so amazing because that's what's happening to me this year is all of a sudden London House Science, they approached me. What does that look like where we can teach the youth about research? I says, what, wisdom seeking? As soon as they come to me with Western different narrative, I go, okay, I'll indigenize it. You mean wisdom seeking? Okay, let's do this. It's like now the youth because they're our future, they have a voice. They need to be in those conversations.
Yeah. And I love that about the circle. Everybody has a place, right? And I think that's so
Exactly.
important. It's so important for youth because sometimes I think their value and their wisdom can be discarded as like, oh, that's just they're young and they don't know enough. And I think that that can be really harmful. What I'm hearing that in this circle, everybody has a place, everyone has something to contribute, and that's respected and valued.
Exactly. We can write this beautiful, pretty program and develop it, but if it's not inclusive of the voices of, they're the ones that know what the problems are. They're the
Yes.
ones that say, this is what's going on,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, then we can go from there. They're the center. There's the circle. There's the center. There's the youth. Their
Their
voices.
voices. Yes. Yeah. 100%. And I know that like even in some of the research that's been done, that agency that youth have is so critical, and that when their ability to make decisions for themselves gets taken away, then
Mhm.
outcomes can be worse for them.
Right?
Right?
Yeah. Why do
Yeah.
we need to contribute to that intergenerational trauma, transgenerational trauma? And that's so part of that. We need to break those barriers, those cycles, and remove
Mhm.
that square, those silos, that linear way of thinking. Let's go back to the circle. Look, go outside. The sun, it's round. Grandmother Moon is round. All of those things, that circle of life is so, so important for all of us.
Yeah. Yes. There's another person in the audience who works at a youth facility and was wondering about how to support the Indigenous youth who are sent there.
I don't know, depends what kind of facility. I mean, if it's social justice, health, I mean, I know we have out in the London House Science, like in the hospital, it seems like I'm in the hospitals. Um,
Yeah.
but working with the youth is space for them, creating space for them where, for an example, at Indigenous healing spaces, the youth and the families that come from fly-in or all different areas, they created an Indigenous healing space where there's medicines there for them. They had the
Mm,
navigators, Indigenous navigators are there. They bring in Indigenous knowledge keepers there. They bring in different things for them so that's creating space. You need to create space for these youth.
mm,
That's part of that identity, that sense of
yeah.
belonging.
Yeah, absolutely. And they kind of like, I know I'm conscious of time, and Tracy, I hope it's okay if I maybe ask one more question that someone had.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I think what you're saying really ties into this, where the question is that a lot of youth may miss the opportunities to learn about their own spirit and connecting to the land. And what would you recommend to share with our youth in community who may not want to participate due to anxiety or feeling of judgment? And for example, this person was saying, I wasn't shown this way or given the opportunity until my late 30s.
Oh, that's my story.
Yeah.
That's my story. Heck yeah. I mean, I could have related um if we had all day. No, but it was short, 45 minutes.
I wish
But
we had you all day, Tracy. I
that's
think we could
my
talk for
story.
hours. Yeah,
That was
yeah.
my story, my identity. I had loss of identity, language, who I was. I didn't even know anything about who I was. And as I was ashamed of
Mm,
being Indigenous because of all of the, all of those impacts. But what would I say? You're saying my story. I had anxiety, manic depression, all of those things and what I do today, I just say, you know what? One day at a time. If you feel, what do I say with you? That's what I do. Maybe we just need a one-on-one. They're not prepared for group. They're gonna, maybe they feel comfortable talking to this knowledge keeper than this
mhm.
knowledge keeper. It's about building that trust.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that that is so underappreciated, is cultivating trust in youth. And like, why should this person just talk to you? Why should they just participate? That there has to be like a two-way relationship there. rather than, I think in some contexts, especially kind of more in like Western perspectives, it's like you have your counselor and you have someone coming to you, and there's already a hierarchy there, and they may have certain experiences with the healthcare system, period. We don't know
Oh,
what someone's coming in with, right? And to be, even from our research, people don't have good experiences if they're racialized, period, in the healthcare system, right? Like so, like it's a big challenge in, I think, shifting also the perspective of helpers to ensure that, like, how am I cultivating trust in youth? What am I doing to support that?
and a lot of the time that sacred space provided for them is we need to have those conversations with them.
Hmm.
How can we build trust? Maybe the ones that are in that circle aren't ready, but there are ones that can be sitting in that circle and that have done a little bit of their healing, that have moved
Yeah.
forward. And I said, so when you went through that build that mistrust, what worked for you?
Yes.
We can't just automatically assume, you know. But yeah, it has to be, community driven. It has to be
Yeah.
through, and sometimes it could be just coming in and saying, okay, we're going to do storytelling on the creation story,
Hmm.
and then we bring in a knowledge keeper. He talks about the creation, or she talks about the creation story, and then we have a sharing at the end. You would believe the wealth of
Mm.
knowledge, but also concerns or
Yeah.
problematic, or what problems that we can come from that to find solutions to help them.
Wow. Yeah, I think that that's a really beautiful note to end on, and I think everyone's saying we need to hear more from you. So I do wish we actually had you for a whole day. Like, even just the holistic developmental model was really beautiful to see too. So would love to learn more about that, and we'll look into it as well. But thank you so much for being here, for sharing your knowledge with everybody. It was really, really inspiring to hear. And there's a whole list in the chat of everyone just thanking you for your time and your graciousness and your insight as well. So thank you much, very, very, very much, Tracey.
Uh, I
Yeah,
just want to say Chimigwach Nokomis, Chimigwach Mishomas, Chimigwach Minabawadzalan, Chimigwach Kishamadado, Chimigwach Kishamadado, Chimigwach Kishamadado, Chimigwach Kishamadado. Kanagana, all my relations. Thank you, everybody. Miigwech.
thank you so much. Bye, everyone. And also, please make sure we'll be here again on February 9th, where Dr. Ariel Sheftal from the US is going to be speaking to us about Black youth and suicide prevention strategies as well. So please be sure to join us then as well. So thank you again, and I hope you all have a really wonderful day.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Tracey.
All right. Take care.